Had a conversation with a client the other day, and I don't know why I never really do this, but I felt like doing this grading system.
Yeah.
So, where's workout right now? He's like, oh man, it's an A. I was like, okay, cool. And then we got on to home and I was like, where's marriage? He goes, it's probably a C plus. And I said, do you want to keep it that way or not? No, I mean, I like it to go
That's a
up.
great
And
question. Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, what are you going to do about it? And he kind of said, I know the things I should do. We probably should go on a date or go on counseling. And I was like, well, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And the cool news is I got a text here in the last 2 weeks of them on a date, him and his wife. And that was awesome. That was
Love it. Love
amazing
it.
to get. And that was really cool. That I eat that stuff up.
Yeah.
They're another example. They've never hit a crazy rock bottom, but they're almost getting ready to accept, hey, this is just the way it is. Maybe when the kids get out of the house, we'll have more time and energy to hang out and do things. And so anyway, just for that listener, it's
Yeah.
obviously don't accept rock bottom as defines you, and that's who you are forever. And at the same time, I don't accept lukewarm in any area of your life. It can be better.
Today, Cory Carlson joins us on the Systematic Selling Podcast. Cory is an executive coach and keynote speaker. He's the author of 2 books, Win at Home First, an inspirational guide to work-life balance, and Rise and Go, how to get back up with courage and move forward with confidence. Cory is also the host of the popular Win at Home podcast. I asked Cory to join us because one of the biggest barriers to our success as founders and sales leaders is when we have a chaotic personal and family life. When things unravel at home, they tend to spill into your business and impact your ability to sell. So, how can you more effectively manage the competing pressures for your attention? What systems can you design in your life and work to achieve an optimal balance? These are the types of questions Cory helps his executive clients work through and what we're going to be talking about today. So, without further ado, Cory, welcome to the pod.
Sean, thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation. I enjoyed the few conversations we've had leading up to today, hitting record. So this will be fun.
Same here, my friend. Cory, did I miss anything important or get anything wrong in that introduction?
No, I think the other big piece of that intro, been married 25 years and have 3 kids who are now 20, 16, and almost 12. So I've been
Awesome.
on this journey we'll dive into with them along the way, supporting and maybe reminding me when I've got off balance, which is why this became my life mission.
Awesome. Well, can't wait to unpack that. Today, we are going to be talking about work-life balance and founder-led sales. But before we do, I'd like our audience to get to know you a little better. So you're currently based out of Cincinnati. Where did you grow up? I take it you didn't grow up there.
Yeah, correct. I did not grow up here. I started my career in basically, I grew up in Kansas City
Yep.
and then went to University of Missouri, met my wife there, and then we started our career and family in Kansas City.
Mhm.
And I got a degree in civil engineering. And so I kind of thought,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to be a civil engineer for life. And
Yeah.
I took my first job, started in a cubicle designing airport pavements. And I was like, this is not for me. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, thank goodness we have engineers who love doing it. I worked for an awesome company and bosses. I just didn't like what I was doing.
Yeah.
And during that time, I got my MBA. I was just kind of exploring what else is out there that I could do,
Yeah.
and I got introduced to a company that sold civil engineering products like storm sewer, bridges,
Yep.
water quality structures, and I actually loved it. I was like, this is great. I'd take my civil engineering background mixed with sales, which I come to find I loved. I didn't know I
Yeah.
loved it that much or
Yeah.
how I would do that for a living. But that's what I started doing. I started selling. So in Kansas City, I left civil engineering, went to a company selling civil engineering construction products,
Yeah.
and then Sean had kind of a sales, trajectory that many
Mhm.
people will have. Is I had a territory, had success, hit the sales numbers. They cut the territory in half. They said, go do it again. And they put someone else in my other half of the
Yeah.
territory. But fortunately, I was able to do it again by
Yeah. Wow.
just doing the cold calls, getting out there, building relationships. I mean, kind of
Yeah.
everything that you teach your listeners and your teams to do.
Yeah.
Then I got promoted and moved to Denver, Colorado, where I manage a bunch of people in states. Did that for a while in Denver, then promoted to Cincinnati. When I get to Cincinnati, I am now vice president of a $120 million division for our company. And Sean, there's an interesting part here because at this time, I was the VP of this division, and our
Yeah.
division was the largest EBITDA or profitability contributor to our overall billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
So lots of visibility. And that was both good and bad. I mean, the good was a lot of visibility. Our division
Bad.
got a
Same
lot of
thing.
got a lot of great
Yeah.
resources and things went well, people knew it. But also on the flip side, I got a lot of bad visibility. When we
Uh-huh.
had a bad month or the margin started to dip, everyone wanted to know what was going on. So I had a lot of
Real
yeah.
quick. What type of business was this?
Yeah, so this is the civil engineering construction products. So we're
Okay.
selling bridges, storm sewer.
You
Yeah,
stayed in that
I stayed
same.
in it. Yeah, I was with that company for 10 years from Kansas City to Denver to Cincinnati.
Got it.
And so when I get to this role in Cincy, I was managing people older than me.
Hmm.
I leapfrogged my boss. I was now managing him.
Mm.
And I had this high visibility from the executive team. And what that caused me to do, Sean, how that carried over to my really personal life is I started skipping the gym. I was
Mm.
skipping quiet time.
Yeah.
Kids are playing on the floor at night, and I'm on the couch with the laptop on my lap.
Yep.
And I was like, there's got to be a better way. This can't be sustainable. I and so I went to my boss. I mean, I didn't share all the, my inner feelings I was having about it, but I just
Sure.
basically was like, hey, Tom, I love working for you and enjoy, but we're traveling different parts of the country all the time. I need some help. He's like, get an executive coach. I've always had one. I was like, man, why
Yeah.
didn't you tell me this sooner?
Wow.
So I got an executive coach and it changed my life. And I
Mm.
know that sounds extreme, but
No.
well, it's true because one, it's now what I do for a living,
Yeah.
but also just changed my life because it allowed me to zoom out of my day to day. And, I thought before that, just, clean email inbox was super important and a
Hmm.
good looking P&L. And
Yep.
that's all that really mattered. But as I zoomed out with the help of this coach, no, what's my purpose? It's
Yeah.
not just about work. It's home, it's work, it's being a friend. What are my priorities? Right? When we prioritize everything, we're prioritizing nothing.
Yeah.
And so that just helped me start to think differently. So what I ended up doing is as I had this coach, as it changed my life, I just started leading like a coach. And when I was with my employees, I'd say, hey, how's home? How's work? And I started just to see a difference. I took one
Yeah.
more corporate move where I was president of sales for a national contractor. We injected a chemical grout in the soil underneath concrete slabs. You'd inject this chemical grout in the soil, it expands.
Mm.
And if you've ever seen great stuff
Yes.
eh, in a can at Home
Yep.
Depot, that's what this was, but
This
on
was.
steroids.
Wow.
We had big trucks that would show up to job sites, inject the polyurethane in the ground, and it would, as it expand, it would displace the unwanted water, increase bearing
Yep.
capacity of the soil. Well, when I was president of sales for that company, I was leading the sales force as an executive coach pretty much. And so I
Yeah.
would travel to Nashville to meet with that sales guy. And I'd ask, we'll use the name, David. David, are you dating your spouse? Are you being intense with your kids? Also, are you blocking on time on your calendar? And what's the hit ratio on your proposals look like? And then when I go to New York to travel with that sales guy,
Yep.
same thing. How's home? How's work? And when
Yep.
I saw they got better and our company EBITDA improved, I was like, I want to do this for a living. And so
Let
that
me
began the journey.
let me hit the pause button there because I want to unpack that of your journey then, going from there to becoming an executive coach and making that your full-time living. But before we do, I want to emphasize a couple of things that you said and unpack another. And one of those things that you said was lead like a coach. And I want to reinforce that to our audience. Y'all are founders and sales leaders. And yes, it's one thing to hire a coach like Cory or me or whatnot, bring in somebody from the outside. That has a ton of value, but also you in that leadership position as you work with your team, beginning to think and lead that way, you know, being being attentive to what's going on in their personal lives. Also, when you're finding out and you're uncovering how your team is doing with their numbers, and it's one thing to say, hey, you need to generate more leads, or you need to do more calls, or you need to improve your discoveries. It's another thing to say, walk me through how you're currently generating leads. And let's talk about how you're doing this. And this idea that Cory's bringing up right now, I really want to reinforce that to you. Think like a coach, lead like a coach. Now, Cory, what I want to go back to is when you hired this executive coach for you, tell me about that first meeting. What what happened during that first meeting where you go, yeah, you know what? This is what I've needed. This is what I need this level of accountability. I need this level of challenging my thinking. What happened in that meeting?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, loved your comment, how you reinforced for that listener of, leading like a coach. And I just want to add a little octane to that
Yeah.
because I completely agree and support that. And I encourage, all the listeners, it's not only is it okay to talk about home life and personal life with your employees, it's
Oh, so
going to
good.
make you a better leader. And I've had
Yeah.
clients or have clients where they have got so much fruit from the coaching I've done with them.
Yeah.
They're turning around and doing it to their employees. Pretty much just like what happened in my experience.
Love
But
it. Yeah.
I get screenshots from some of my clients who are working with their direct
Yeah.
reports, going over personal goals and professional goals with their clients, whatever they may be. And it
Yeah.
is awesome to see. And our, employees want to be seen, valued, and heard. And if
Hmm.
all you're ever going to do is just talk about numbers, 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 they'll get bored with that. And you'll become a better
100%.
leader by understanding why are they working well. Maybe it's because they're getting to bed on time, they're
Yeah.
exercising, home life's going well. Maybe their numbers aren't very well. Well, maybe you'll know it's because home life's a little challenging, or they're staying up too late, or they're gaming, or whatever their thing may be. And it just gives you a much bigger picture into your team
Yeah.
and makes you a better leader. So I just thought it was a great point, and I've just have seen that time and time again. My clients just sharing just stories of victory
100%.
as
Yeah.
they have increased their, call it, coaching to their team.
Yeah.
But Sean, going to that question of what was my first encounter with my coach like,
Yeah.
I think a word that's coming to mind right now, I mean, it was like freeing.
Really?
It was just freeing to have someone ask questions and for me just to talk and share. These are the challenges I'm currently facing. These are
Yeah.
frustrations I currently have, because you can't share some of those answers with the boss because it may be about the boss. And
100%.
same thing with family. You can't share some of them with your spouse or with your kids because it's about them. And obviously there comes a time where you got to go talk to all those different parties if it's directly about them. I get it.
Absolutely.
But there's this moment where outside perspective is so huge. And so I think a part of it was freeing in that first call and just to unload and answer questions and identify part of when we are overwhelmed as leaders, we're confused, is just because we're allowing all those thoughts to be in our head. And
Yeah.
by putting them on paper, by actually starting to lay them out, you start to get clarity because you see the things that are running around in your head and what you're thinking about. And so it's pretty darn powerful. So I'd say freeing's one, and
Yeah.
then exciting would be the other word. Because as he asked questions, he would challenge me, and a great coach will unlock your potential. Because by yourself, you get in your own way with self-limiting beliefs, or oh, I tried this once before, it didn't work.
Yep.
But with a strong coach, they can help you dream bigger and just and the accountability to help get there.
Yeah. 100%. And so often, even us as coaches, whether on a regular basis or periodically, need to be coached as well. So this isn't a one way. I know from my own personal experience, I can get in my own head with my own stuff in ways that I don't have that blindness when I'm working with a client. And I got the pattern recognition because I'm detached. It's almost like an attorney trying to represent themselves. You've
Mhm.
got this emotional attachment, you've got blindness to things, and having somebody that can see certain things that you can sanity check that you wouldn't have in your own head is extremely valuable. I know it is with me, and I imagine it is with you as well.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go from you're in this position where you're managing a large division, you're getting a lot of visibility, you've really gone up the ladder. You've hit the pinnacle of that division. You've hired a executive coach that's helping you work through things, and you discover this passion for coaching. What, it's a big difference between you discovering that passion for coaching and then going, yeah, I want to leave what I'm doing here, the money that I'm making here, the W-2 paycheck, and I want to be a founder of my own business and coach full time. What was that thought process like, and how did you make that transition?
Yeah, so when I was president of sales for the company, that's when I started to get this itch, like I want to do the coaching. And
Yeah.
what went through my head is probably what every listener went through their head as well. And before, they made the jump from corporate into entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
or corporate into the small business that they decided to buy or run. And so for me, I I didn't have the guts to leave,
Mm.
for a while, and eventually not even on my own terms, which I'll get to. But I didn't have a couple reasons I didn't have the guts. One was obviously the money, the
Yep.
provision. I was making more money at that time than I ever had. Like you mentioned, W-2, the paycheck was consistent,
Yep.
and to leave that salary, equity, bonus to go to 0 as a coach and the
Yeah.
unpredictable, I just didn't really have the guts to do it, and it was a long process. I think anytime we go through those processes, for me, I'm a man of faith, so I think God is working through
Hmm.
us in those, and not only for me, is also my wife. I had to be, she had some ideas. She thought, well, I was going to be a corporate guy forever. It's what we always
Yeah.
talked about, what we
Yeah.
prepared for. She was getting hung up a little bit on the insurance side. Well, who's going to pay our insurance and how that works? And
Yeah.
so together, we were just kind of having to unpack this whole provision piece, what that looked like for each of us. The
Yeah.
other was identity. I had my identity tied to that title of president of sales. I thought it was pretty darn cool. And I like that. And to go to a kind of a low level executive coach just starting out, I had some shallow issues with identity.
Yeah.
Eh, but at the same time, with all that happening, I just had this burning desire that I need to be living in my purpose.
Yeah.
And my purpose, and I put together this purpose statement I talk about in my first book, a book called Win at Home First, where in that book, I have a framework to put together a vision statement. It's the 5 Ps. And I'd be more than happy to send a listener a free book. They pay shipping and handling, Sean. So we can put it in the, notes afterwards. But my website,
Awesome.
corymcarlson.com/free book. Be more than happy. You pay shipping and handling, and I'll get it to the listener, and they can unpack
Awesome.
the book, Win Home First, or my second book, Rise and Go. But on Win
Thank
Home
you.
First, I put together a
Yeah.
vision statement. And that vision statement is to connect people to greater performance and even more significant purpose.
Mm.
That's the vision statement I put together about 8 years ago. It's the same one I use to this day.
Yeah.
And so for me to connect people to greater performance, that means I want to help people win at home and win at work. And purpose is if I can connect them to God or something bigger, I will. But if faith is not part of the conversation, just serve others, add
Yeah.
value to other people's lives. And so that was what my purpose was. And I didn't feel I was able to do it where I was at. I felt, hey, let's lean into coaching. And as I mentioned, I didn't have the guts to do it. So sometimes decisions are made for us.
Yeah.
And in August 2016, I was terminated. We
Mm.
were owned by a private equity group. We were
Yeah.
unsuccessful going to market to be
Yeah.
sold. When that happened, they did some restructuring. Some of us were let go,
Mhm.
and I was one of them. And Sean, when I got terminated, I called my wife and I said, "Babe, I got good news, bad news. The bad news is I just got fired.
Yeah.
The good news is I got a 4 month severance package. Can
Nice.
I go try coaching?" And she
Little
says, "Yeah,
seed money.
you got 4 months, and then go get a real job."
Yeah.
But luckily it happened. I was able to hustle, and in those
Mm.
4 months, I got my income to about 50%. Not really 50% of what I used to make, but I got it to this
Yeah.
level of 50% of it. I was like, if I could find something else that would pay for that other 50%, I'm doing this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I was, just thanks to cool connections, friends, and I was able to help do sales and marketing for a local manufacturer to do the other 50%. So that's how I
Yeah.
got into it. I bridged the gap. I didn't go from 100% president of sales to 100%
Yeah.
coaching. I had to bridge the
Bridge
gap
that gap.
financially. And the journey was a big mental process
Yeah.
to kind of get ready for it.
Now, what I want to touch on that period when you're having to bridge the gap. So, what was you had the 4 month severance, that's your seed money. What was your go to market strategy there? Here you came from sales. So
Right.
you have that knowledge. It's not like sales is a second language for you as a founder. So you go out there, you got to cover a little bit with another source of income. But in terms of the coaching, how did you start building that? What was your initial way of finding clients?
Yeah, there are a few things I learned in the process. I mean, in the process, I was just, everything seemed new and a great idea. In hindsight, man, I'd love to just go tell my, you know, self 5 years ago, hey, this is how to go do it. But what I did
Give me
do,
both
yeah,
perspective,
give you
what you
both of them.
did,
Yeah.
and then what your advice would be.
Yeah, and some of it was a learning there. Here's what I tell a lot of coaches starting out, or even individuals that are just launching something. Is I think of this in circles, like a ring one
Mhm.
is your close friends, your close family. Ring two kind of are their connections, and then ring three are their connections. I met with every ring one that I possibly could,
Yeah.
and I was so naively optimistic that I was going to get clients out of them that is disappointing.
Yeah.
I got one client out of them,
Uh-huh.
and that buddy probably felt sorry for me.
I'm laughing because I can relate. So yeah.
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 But what I've learned in the process, and I go tell everyone that
Yeah.
I work with, and as I help coaches launch their business, is the ring one, you're not going to get in with clients. Plan on not getting them as clients. However,
100%.
have clear messaging of what you want them to go look for and how they can help you, because all of them are going to end the coffee meeting to say, "Oh, this is great. Cory, I love you're going coaching. You're going to do great being a coach. How can I
Uh-huh.
help you? And if your answer is just tell anybody and everybody what I do, they're
Yeah.
going to say, sounds great. They're going to go to their car thinking, hey, I want to help Cory. How do I help Cory? And then they kind of think, oh man, wonder who it could be. And then they start looking at their phone. They're totally distracted because you gave them too big of an avatar, too big of, you gave them generalizations.
100.
Instead, it's know who are the people that you can help through your coaching or whatever service it is you do. And when you meet
Mhm.
with those ring ones, be very specific of how they could help. Please give me 2 to 3 names of people that fit this criteria. And
Mm.
now your ring one people, as they leave, are laser focused on how to help you.
Yeah. I want to reinforce that for a second. So, to the audience, what Cory is talking about there is how vital it is to clearly define and articulate your ideal client profile, your ICP. Without that, nothing else happens. You got hope as a strategy from there. But if you have a clear, crystal clear ICP, that helps everybody else that you're talking with. Not just you attracting customers, that helps when you're talking to your friends, family, you're attending networking events. When you're able to articulate who your client is, why they would be your client. In other words, what problems that you're helping them solve, that that is a huge unlock. You can figure out the other things once you have leads and prospects coming into your pipeline, but you won't have any of that without a clear ICP. So I hand it back over to you, Cory.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I wish I would have had that sooner out of the gates.
Yeah,
Back to lessons learned. When I thought I could coach anybody and everybody. And there's a piece of it. Yes, I could. I mean, these tools are helpful, and many of our services will help
100%.
anybody and everybody for sure. But man, that phrase, there's riches in the niches.
Yes.
And as you kind of think about that ICP or ideal avatar, and for me, who mine is, and it took time to think about, but my ideal avatar or ICP is a business leader who
Yep.
loves Jesus, drinks
Yep.
beer,
Yep.
married, has kids, makes 200,000 plus, leads a team, and is hungry and humble.
Mm.
Like that is my individual because I can relate to all the aspects of it. Now, have I coached people outside of it and had success? Yes.
Yep.
I've coached an atheist. Matter of fact, I share a story in my book about
Yeah.
him, obviously
Yeah.
with permission. Awesome story there. I've coached people without kids. I mean, it has happened. It can work. But when I'm thinking who am I, speaking to, writing to, it's that individual that fits that criteria. So I
I
think
love
that's pretty darn powerful.
Yeah, I love what you just did there because a lot of folks they can be sold on the idea, yeah, I need an ICP, but they think specifically or exclusively in quantitative terms. They're this size of a company. They earn X amount in revenue and they see it through numbers. But what you also brought up was the qualitative aspect of who would align or who you would align with when you're talking about, they've got to be hungry. They've got these other aspects to them, intangible aspects that you're looking for to make sure they're a fit. And I think that's powerful.
Yeah. And just for listeners thinking, well, he's comparing an individual to an entity. Like that's different. And I think if
Yeah.
you're thinking of your avatar for a company, which many of us, I have to do that as well, but put some character elements to it. Like, hey, I want a company that's got a culture of curiosity. And so you can think about it in your conversations. Hey, what's innovation look like? Or I want a culture that is one that values the whole self. So I think there are some character elements that you can add to these companies instead of just being revenue, employee size. You can add some human
Wh-
characteristics to them that will stand out from company A to B. And I mean, just little examples. I mean, we all know there's a difference in a Chick-fil-A store or company
Yep.
than there is another fast food joint. Same thing
Yeah.
about any type of companies. I have the opportunity to work inside a lot of companies from either speaking or coaching, and you can totally see the different elements of companies. Those that encourage you to take PTO because they value what that looks like. Those that it's hard as heck to use your PTO, and so
No, you bring up a great point. And even when you think in terms of I love how you're talking about looking at it on a macro level. What does that culture look like? Their qualitative aspects. But even then, when you're targeting companies, you've got specific people or buyers within those companies that
mhm,
you're working with. And so they will have those qualitative aspects that you would be looking for. And it can be different with each ICP, or as Cory uses the term avatar, that you look at and go, okay, are we aligned here? Are we a fit? But having that clarity is huge. It's not only huge for, whether you're selling, but it's also huge for your sales team to understand who you're going after
mhm.
and to have that crystal clear in people's minds. Now, what I want to do is talk about why this idea of win at home first is important to you. So, real talk for for me in 2003. So my wife and I this year have been married 29 years. But in
Congrats.
2003, thank you. 2003, at 7 years, it almost ended, and we separated. And we separated. I was a .com founder in the late '90s, raised a little bit of money, and in 2001, when things went south, I was a .bomb founder, and I we had two young girls, and I did not know how to manage that stress. I went 18 months young, late 20s, young family, went 18 months without taking a salary. So, you know how that goes. You're draining your whatever little savings you had, you're running up
Yep.
credit card debt, you're doing all these things. Put a lot of financial pressure on my family. And through that, to help recover, I took a sales job and I put in a ton of hours. And in my mind, I'm thinking it's on me. I got to take care of this. I'm the one who dug us in this hole. So I was putting in the 80, 90 plus hours a week. I was not there with my kids. So that was putting a lot of stress on my wife, who, you know, suffers from migraines and things like that. And so it got to that breaking point in 2003. And through a series of events and wise people in our lives, and specifically with me on things I needed to deal with, after a few months, my wife and I were able to work things out and, you know, built a foundation for an even stronger marriage that would go through even more challenges career wise for both of us and things like that down the road. But because we made it through that crucible at year 7, we had the tools and the strategies and the muscle memory and the discipline to work through those things, to prioritize each other in our relationship, and then to prioritize our family. And it took that near breaking point to understand just how important it is to work on both your family and your business. And it's not fun. So if you could, before we walk through the strategies of, how you can do that in a more preemptive way, or if you've gone through it, how you can, work through it. What I'm curious about is, what is it in your own life that made you say, this is the message I want to get out to the world? This is important to me personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I care so much about helping leaders win at home and win at work is because I've lost at both. I have lost at both, and kind of different times throughout both. The
Yeah.
marriage and the work. Early on in our marriage, I too was putting all my identity in work and
Mhm.
provision, and so that just led side jobs on my full-time job, like, trying to invest in real estate and trying to do different kind of
Yeah.
multi-level marketing things
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was hustle, hustle, hustle to
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
get more and more money because, hey, that defines who I am as a man and my worth, and
Yeah.
just fell into all that junk. So that was bad news. And then that obviously carried into, poor choices in my marriage. And so just, really just kind of, bad things in that front.
Yeah.
And then on the work side, another piece of the work is I would travel with all, different salespeople or strategic partners, or as I'm around and just traveling, as I would be with these different business leaders. And when they would talk about home, their energy would just go down. But if they
Mm.
talked about work, their energy was high and they were excited and let's, talk about new products. But when you talk about marriage or their kids, and it just is like blah. And so I just saw a lot of just kind of absentee parents. I saw
Mhm.
burned out
Yeah.
leaders. I saw, marriages just not going very well. And so for me, that became, I had my own personal story, but then I saw that need out in the marketplace, if
Yeah.
you will, that, hey, I want to put a stop to this. I want to
Mm.
help different leaders. And that there's probably a lot of listeners who've fortunately not hit a rock bottom in their marriage or in their personal life, and that is awesome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had to hit a rock bottom. But for a lot of those listeners, if you hit rock bottom, you're like, oh, that was awful. I had the affair, or I did this or did that. And so you know what that's like. You're like, I never want to go there again. Hey, help
Yeah.
me, Corey and Sean. Tell me what we got to do to never go back that direction again. We'll do that. But I think there's a lot of, listeners who haven't hit a rock bottom, but they are allowing and settling for a lukewarm marriage. They're
Mm.
settling for a lukewarm engagement with their kids or just a personal life. And I even have clients, or I'll have, friends where they're just kind of like, hey, this is kind of what it is. I don't know how it could get much better. I'm busy at work. My wife's busy. She's also an executive. I just don't know how we could do much better.
Yeah.
Had a conversation with a client the other day, and I don't know why I never really do this, but I felt like doing this grading system.
Yeah.
So, where's workout right now? He's like, oh man, it's an A. I was like, okay, cool. And then we got on to home, and I was like, where's marriage? He goes, it's probably C plus. And I said, do you want to keep it that way or not? No, I mean, I like it to go
That's a
up.
great
And
question. Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, what are you going to do about it? And he kind of said, I know the things I should do. We probably should go on a date or go on counseling. And I was like, well, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And the cool news is I got a text here in the last 2 weeks of them on a date, him and his wife. And that was awesome. That was
Love it. Love
amazing
it.
to get. And that was really cool. That I eat that stuff up.
Yeah.
They're another example. They've never hit a crazy rock bottom, but they're almost getting ready to accept, hey, this is just the way it is. Maybe when the kids get out of the house, we'll have more time and energy to hang out and do things. And so anyway, just for that listener, it's
Yeah.
obviously don't accept rock bottom as defines you, and that's who you are forever. And at the same time, I don't accept lukewarm in any area of your life. It can be better.
I want to hit the pause button on that. I absolutely love the fact that you bring up the lukewarm, the settling aspect in your personal life, because that to me is far more dangerous than the rock bottom, because we change with pain. We
Right.
we don't change when we're comfortable. It's the same way like when you're selling to a prospect, you're better aligned with the prospect when they understand their pain. If they don't feel that pain, you're not speaking to that pain, they don't understand, they will not make that change. The same thing goes with you, and being self-aware of that is a huge win. But I think also when you're talking about with that client, hey, in business, I'm an A. And I bet you there was a level of pride that he had in the fact that, yeah, this is an A. When it came to the C plus in the marriage, there's a little bit of sheepishness, but not a ton of pain involved in that. And I'm curious about this idea of what can we do, whether we're founders or sales leaders, of seeing our personal life, our family life through a similar lens as our business, in the sense of we will do things, we will invest in professional development to be the best we can be, to make, to earn as much as we can, to uncover these new ideas and these new strategies that will give our business a competitive advantage. But why is it so hard to make that similar connect, to invest the time in developing the relationships with our spouses and our children, the way we would develop those relationships with our customers and our most valued partners? The fact that we don't have KPIs associated with it? Is it the fact that we have greater status here versus there? What is it that we can do to begin shifting that mindset?
Yeah. I mean, great question. And I want to be thoughtful with my answer because it could take us down a whole bunch of different paths, and
Yeah.
not that any of the necessary paths are wrong. It just, yeah, I just want to be, thoughtful with it. I think the biggest thing is the listeners, myself, yourself. It starts with a choice. It's a choice that you do want to win at home and you do want to win at work. Like, we can't just be passive with it and wing it and think it's going to work. And at work, we're very intentional. Hey, I got to make these many amount of sales calls a day, or I got to reach out to these strategic partners.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I get, if you're in the accounting world, I got to make sure I, get the reports done and do the reconciliation. I mean, you've kind of got all these to-dos on work. You make a choice. Hey, I want to be successful over here.
Yep.
At home, are we making that choice? Are you satisfied that C plus that we talked about earlier, or do you want to make a choice to make an improvement? So I think for every listener, it's that gut check. Do you want to make the choice to improve? And if you do, you're already taking a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Even if you don't hear anything else on this podcast, just saying, hey, I want to show up better as a father, as a
Yeah.
mother, as a
Yep.
husband, as a wife, as a friend, just by stepping into, the space, you're going to get better results. So the first one would be choice.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's pretty powerful is to zoom out. We are so busy thinking about work and our success at work. And Sean, one thing that was eye-opening for me, and I stumbled on this when I was preparing for a talk, is I've had 18 bosses in one family.
Wow. 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 Wow.
And
Yeah.
I've made choices that have negatively affected my family, maybe negative affected my self-care, negative affected some area of my life for 18 bosses And to be honest, I don't know where all those bosses are. I don't know if those bosses are still alive today.
Yeah.
I just don't know about them, but I have made so many choices over my career for these 18 individuals, made them higher priority, but yet my family, I just kind of not as much.
Yeah.
And I think if you zoom out for any listener thinking about that, it's like, oh, wow, I'm bending over backwards for this one person I've only worked for 9 months. I'm bending over backwards for this, one individual. And that's something to think about. And this, that we don't want to give our work our best and our family gets the rest. And
Yeah.
for that leader to be thinking about on that choice is your day does not end when you walk through the front door at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Your day ends when your head hits the pillow. And so just making sure that as all of us, myself included, because I even though I can talk about this, I still gotta show up and be a great husband and great dad in my own life.
Yeah.
I could have a hard day as far as, hey, doing podcasts or preparing for talks, for spending time with my clients. I may just want to sit on the couch, but I can't at night. I may have to go throw the lacrosse ball back and forth with my son.
Yeah.
Or hang up a painting for my daughter that she just did. These are recent examples
Yeah.
that I just had to do. But it's one of those deals where I've gotta make sure that I'm being intentional at home also.
Yeah. That's the in is so important. One of the things that my wife and I started doing, and it got easier to do after we empty nested. So we're all in different stages of life, is that you think, okay, you empty nest, you're going to be less busy, you're going to have more time for one another. And what my wife and I found out, we're both really busy. I'm busy with the business, she's busy with her career. And what we had to do was to make date night something that was this is our reconvening and reconnection time, and it's non-negotiable, and it gives us something that we look forward to. We're able to, you know, talk about our week, since we do different things, and to really learn about each other and connect with each other. But it starts with that intentionality, and we would gamify it in the sense of, all right, I'm building a spreadsheet of all the great places that we can have date nights in Orlando
Awesome.
that are not on iDrive, not the part of the tourist district. That if you were a local, man, you would absolutely love to do it. So that's what we would do. I'd start building out the spreadsheet, got little dollar signs, number of dollar signs, depends on how much it is, why we like it, and so forth. And so then we start building the rotation and everything else. But that becomes such a huge part of our process. We didn't do that when we were younger. In hindsight, you look back and go, man, that is something I would have loved to have done then. But you have to find whatever that point of intentionality that you can execute, however big or small, try to find that. And I imagine that that's one of the things that as you've worked in your own life and worked with your clients as well, just trying to find that one, two, three things that they can do intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned KPIs earlier. KPIs are huge to have at home. We do it all the time at work. Those key performance
Yes.
indicators and do it at home. And so for us, we do have KPIs. We want to do 2 date nights a month. That's important for Holly and I. And they
Yeah.
don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be epic.
Yep.
Sometimes, we do go to a nice restaurant. Other times we may do like a bar and grill.
Yeah.
And then also we have KPIs of I want to do 1 date with each of my kids a month.
Yeah.
I want to do 1 overnight with each of my kids a year. I want to do 1 mission trip with each of my kids one on one.
Yeah.
And so I've done it with 2 of my kids. I've got 1 left to do as far
Awesome.
as, him and I going somewhere. And it's just incredible. So yes, it is KPIs. And I think I just had a call with a client just now where he felt Q1, he crushed it with his family and his kids. Q2, he did not. He took his foot off the gas. And as we unpacked it, so he was just traveling a significant amount.
Yep.
So, all right, Q3, what's he going to do with each of his family between now and October 1st?
Yeah.
And so he's going to list some ideas out. Some will be big, some will be small. And I think for that for the listener, if just who are those family members, and if there's kind of low connection right now,
Yeah.
invest some time. Figure out a KPI, figure out an activity to do with each of them.
Yeah. And I think about that when you're thinking about the KPI and the way that you're talking, it's very similar to how you would think about cultivating relationships with customers. You know, and in business, we're always looking for to deepen trust and deepen relationships with our customers. And we're in tune with that. And that mindset shift of treating those at home who are valuable to us to make them feel valuable in the same way that you would treat them like customers.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I want to talk about something I heard on another podcast that you were on. It was fascinating to me. It was talking about, so it was 2020, where you mentioned 2016, you had started your coaching business, but this was 2020, just before COVID in the story. And of course, I guess at that point you were launching full time into coaching, and then COVID hit and you had to navigate that. Tell me
Mhm.
a little more about that story. I'd love to unpack that.
Well, maybe founders can relate to this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, as I mentioned, 2016, we went in 50%
Yeah.
coaching, 50% helping this other manufacturer with sales and marketing. And
Yeah.
over the course of a few years, I went from 75% coaching to 25% helping this manufacturer to
Yeah.
90/10. And then eventually we round the corner into 2020, and my wife and I were like, I think we did it, and I think it's going to work. And
Yeah.
so we gather the family around and kind of make this big fun decision that we're going all in into coaching and speaking,
Yeah.
and use it as a good teaching point of, kids, follow your dreams and cool things will happen, and all,
Yeah.
all the fun stuff. And so we
Yeah.
made this decision to go all in on coaching, speaking, March 1st, 2020,
Best
which
time ever.
best time ever to go out on your own. Well, March 13th, we all kind of know what happened on Friday the 13th, which I'm not a superstitious guy, but I think Friday the
Yeah.
13th is kind of odd that that's when all the shutdown took place.
Yep.
On that day, I got emails canceling speaking engagements and workshops that I had coming up. So in that day, 35% of my revenue vanished. And I know for some listeners, 35% is not that big of a deal. They lost 100% or during
Sure.
COVID, or they lost
Sure.
a loved one. I get it. And yeah, I'm sorry for that. For us and my family, losing 35% was scary as heck.
Mhm.
And what was going to happen to the other 65% were coaching
100%.
clients just going to
Yeah.
start dropping off. And so what this led me to, Sean, was not only scared, but just frustrated.
Mhm.
So frustrated. And for me, I was even frustrated at God. Like, hey, I did this. I took the leap of faith. I did this stuff I'm supposed to do. Left corporate 50/50, 75/25. I did all that. And here I am on a sinking ship, kind of like, thanks, but no
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
And so that's where my head was at, not in a good spot at all. But the summer of 2020 was just awesome summer of just self-discovery, of hearing
Mm.
stories of resilience, reading a lot from books to scripture, to just trying to kind of figure out, how do I get back up?
Yeah.
That became my second book, a book called Rise and Go, and just not diving into all of it. But the phrase rise and go was from a book in the New Testament called Acts,
Mm.
where three different individuals, one in chapter 8, the other in chapter 9, the other in chapter 10 of the book Acts, were told to rise and go.
Mm.
I just was reading that, like, rise and go. Like, I probably need to rise and go, as opposed to sit here in my pity party of my
Yeah.
business is going down and out. I need to rise and go. And so that began me kind of starting to step up out of the valley, kind of climbing up this ladder. And over the coming weeks and months, I just got content that was helping me get up. I had clients calling me who were discouraged, and I said, hey, why don't you look at this article? I just read this article. It was helpful to
Yeah.
me, or I just heard this podcast. It was helpful. And as I shared this content with my clients and helped them get up, I was like, there's something here. So that's why I put together the book Rise and Go. And you mentioned
Yeah.
in the intro, but Rise and Go is to help leaders have the confidence to get back up and the courage to move forward. And in that, there's 20 chapters. The first 10 chapters are kind of focused on that getting back up piece. And then the second set of 10 chapters are that moving forward. So yeah, that was my knockdown. And my I kind of joke with people at times is I've written both books because I got knocked down. Win at home first because I
Yeah.
lost at home, Rise and Go because
Yeah.
I got knocked down. So if I write a third book, you may be suspicious. Oh, what just happened in his life? So I hopefully not all my books have to do with me,
Oh,
falling on my face.
so much of that though is born of pain, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Now, there are a couple things I want to build off that story. First, when, you know, things start hitting the fan that spring of 2020, a lot of times what can happen with founders when you lose a good chunk of your revenue is you you the panic can kind of get you tunnel visioned where you're not wanting to talk to other people. You're not, and sometimes you can shut off your family because you feel this sense of deep insecurity and a sense of, I don't know if you felt this. I'm just going off of what I'm thinking of, this deep insecurity and rawness of, I don't know how we're going to get out of this. And I really don't want to talk about it. But you got to have your family on board. You got to have your spouse on board. What was your communication strategy with your spouse when things like this hit to
Yeah.
where you guys could collaborate on this problem?
Yeah. My, I guess, recommendation out of my own experience is just start now. Like, start communicating life's ups and downs now with your
Yeah.
spouse, with your
Yeah.
friends, have a good group of friends. Because if you've never done it, and you've never been a vulnerable person or open, or you don't want to share work with your spouse because they just won't understand. They're not in the day to day. They don't get it. Or I'm not going to talk to my buddies about it. I'd rather just talk sports and weather. If
Yeah.
you always have surface conversations, then when you're in that valley, you're not going to have well, really the reps,
Yeah.
the reps to talk deep. So I'd say the first thing is just start now. Just start sharing ups and downs with your spouse, and we even do with our kids, just so that they can start to build that resilience muscle that they know, hey, if I fail a test, that's okay. Carlson's, we get back up.
Yeah.
The rise and go phrase is something we'll use a lot in our house. And so by sharing ups and downs now with spouse, kids, friends, when you get to the valley, you've been doing it before. It's not going to be a new thing. So that's one piece I would say. And then the others for me is, man, I'm so grateful I'd started before because I needed to talk to somebody. I
Yeah.
mean, I needed it's that valve. You just got to release the valve. And so by talking to my spouse, by talking to friends, and the other thing is, not only is it a valve release, you talk to them, but you're robbing yourself of great wisdom and advice from other people. I am blown away by so often how many times my wife can say something that's just wise. And it's like, how did you come up with that with such limited data points? And I think, well, you know, one, I think she's smart, but
Mhm.
two, God will use spouses and friends to speak through us or speak through them
To
to
us.
us. And
Yeah.
you're robbing yourself of getting that type of counsel by being too prideful. And so I'd encourage people to talk. And if you don't have a group of guys in your life to talk, or women for the female listeners, start to find them. And that was another part of my story, Sean, is there was a part where I didn't have a close group of friends. I was so busy traveling as president of sales.
Yeah.
I traveled every week trying to be super employee. And on the weekends, I was trying to be super husband and dad. And I got to this one point, I was actually talking to my coach, I just said, I feel empty. I'm
Yeah.
getting, he called it out. He just says, you're giving to everyone all the time. No one's pouring into you. And as we talked about it more, he gave me the just jokes. He said, the problem is you have no friends. And that was true. I had buddies I could go grab a beer with and go talk sports and weather, but I
Yeah.
didn't have anybody I was doing real life with. And so I
Wow.
put together a list of guys and I kind of went and did like some speed dating with them.
Yeah.
And as I did that, I put together this group of guys and we get together every Thursday morning
Mm.
and we talk and it's so powerful. But I say that for that listener because I came from a place I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I had to go find it. So if that's you, go find it.
That's so relatable because especially especially when you're a founder, it can be easy to feel alone. Number one. Number two, it can be hard to find friends that you can relate to. Especially if they're W-2 or whatnot, and you guys are experiencing dealing with different pressures. And sometimes you feel like, I don't know if we can connect. Well, find folks that you can connect with. It may be them, it may be some other folks, but to be able to find people that you can connect and share be open and share these things that are going on so that you can have someone else kind of help you sanity check what you're thinking and unpack those thoughts. I imagine is super super helpful.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is don't be looking for the perfect match friend. Like he can relate to me. He's a founder and he's married and he has 2.2 kids and
Yeah,
everything like you. Yes, it would be awesome if you could find someone that is that perfect copy and he can match or she can match all of your stress points. My thoughts is not going to happen.
yeah,
But they will have some commonalities with you you can glean from.
yeah,
And that's the value in it. So I probably fell victim of that analysis by paralysis, thinking, hey, he's an attorney. I'm not an attorney. I don't think I can relate to him. Or, he's older than me and I can't probably relate. Or he's younger than me. Kind of all this thing. And I think the beauty is pulling people in that kind of have all the different walks of life.
a couple things. You said you try to meet each Thursday or on a regular basis. Do you guys meet in person or do you meet over Zoom? How do you just logistically, how do you do that?
Well, for this Thursday morning group, this is in person. These are some guys here in Cincinnati, so we do
Awesome.
meet in person. I have been in, actually, I am in some virtual things
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, I'm not too shy when it comes to trying to get involved in different groups to help me.
It,
Right? The phrase is, go fast alone or go far with others.
percent. I want to go back to something that you said and reinforce it for the audience. And what you said when it comes to, communicating with your spouse and family during a crisis and learning how to do that is to do it now before the crisis comes. I think that's such an important point because don't wait for the crisis to come and not having built that muscle or have that open line of communication, because that's where, if there's an erosion of trust before you're in the crisis, it's going to be very hard to build trust in the middle of it. So that idea of building that trust and establishing, whether you call it a habit or a system or just a sense of intentionality around communicating with your spouse and family before crises happen, is such an important point that you brought up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just, I just have, yeah, kind of learned and just from experience, right? I had a mentor say wisdom is spelled Wisdumb.
Yeah.
And so it's from different dumb mistakes. And I think that was a big one for me is only talking about things when maybe the crisis hits.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to have these conversations more ongoing with my wife,
100%.
with my
Yeah.
kids. And so it's been pretty powerful.
Now, as we get to the home stretch here in our conversation, you talked about what happened in 2020 when you went 100%, you're all in, and then
Hmm.
you experience those challenges. It's 4 years later, so obviously you overcame those challenges and you've built your business from there. Walk us through what happened. How did you navigate those challenges to begin building momentum for your business?
Yeah, as I did the rise and go, and as I got out there, got back to kind of blocking and tackling. I mean, making the calls and
Mm-hmm.
having the coffees or the Zoom meetings, and just starting to just have more conversations and get going. And and to fast forward to now where I'm at, I mean, I still have my ups and downs mentally. I mean,
Yeah.
at the macro, I can't believe I get to do this for a living. This is amazing that I get to
And that,
coach business leaders and help
yeah.
activate them to win at home and win at work, and to get
Yeah.
the cool text of people's marriage getting better, or they just crush it on stage at their company talk, like
Yeah.
whatever it may be. I love it. It is so cool. But there are just still months that may be hard, or
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get the client you thought you were going to get, or the speaking engagement you're excited about, you
Yeah.
find out you weren't the keynote speaker selected.
Right.
There's still all that discouragement that can happen. And so there's a few things I do just to make sure I kind of keep my head in the game.
Yeah.
And and so for some of that is, we all have different head trash, just different lies we hear, or I lost a prospect, I'll never get another prospect. And so
Yeah.
as I have different head trash, basically have written out different I am statements and
Mm.
truths to help compete against those, and have victory over them. So when those self-limiting beliefs start to kick in, I
Yeah.
can go after them proactively. So
Mm.
that's, something that I did start in 2020 and I continue to do now. At the back of my book, Rise and Go, I put together this Rise and Go manifesto. There's
Mm.
8 different parts. And I built this. I mean, I did not come up with the idea of manifesto. Other people have done it, but I actually just
Sure.
started using one myself
Yeah.
of what that could look like. And it's a Google Doc, and it's way long. It's I think it's like 16
Yeah.
pages now.
Yeah.
I don't look at it every single day, and nor when I do look at it, do I look at every single word on there. But I'll kind of scroll through there, hit some of the high points. But in these 8 different parts, I've got I am statements. I've got some different kind of vision board items
Mm-hmm.
there to remind me of, hey, what are some of the goals I've identified before?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to dream when you feel you just got your teeth kicked
Yeah.
in. But then I got some other cool stuff in there, Sean. Like, there was this phrase that came to me in 2020 based off of a Bible verse in Psalm 127. But it came to this whole idea that, hey, God's got the night shift,
Mm.
which means to me is I can work hard from 8 to 5, and then I can be done
Yeah.
knowing that God's got the night shift. I can hang out with my family, I could do the gym, I could do whatever it is. And so in this manifesto, I've got cool sections or stories in there of things that have happened for my business that were way out of my control. And every listener's got those cool things of how they got this awesome client that they did not know they would get. And
Yeah.
but yet somebody made an introduction. And it's powerful for us to capture that, so we can go back on our down days and be like, oh yeah, you know, cool things have happened in the past and they'll happen again. So those are some of just the different pieces that I used to get up from being knocked down in 2020. And I still use to this day.
Yeah. You bring up the scripture, and a lot of times, especially in the Old Testament, uh, a lot of stories were written specifically for the purpose of reminding not only those who were contemporary, but generations to come of the faithfulness and the the fact that you use the phrase, God's got the night shift, that is it. You're able to point to those points in your business and life where you go, yeah, that's where God was working
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
wasn't. So,
That's right. And it's cool for us to know that.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
said this earlier when you were talking about your story of 2003, when you
yeah,
were like, it's all on me. It's all on me. And what helps me with this God has a night shift and having my file of some different cool stories is it reminds me it's not all on me. It's
so
not
true.
all on me. That things are at work, whether you believe in God or you believe in the universe, there are
Yeah.
things that are happening that are out of our control. You and I meeting, that was out of our control. I mean, thanks to a LinkedIn algorithm and some things pointing and a
Yeah.
common connection we had, it
Yeah.
it opened this up, and that's true of all of us. And so I think we put this heavy false burden on ourselves that it's all on us, both our success and our failure. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes our failure can be on us, as we both mentioned in our marriage woes.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything we haven't talked about today that you think would be really important to founders and sales leaders to know about?
We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did.
I would end with this for the listener is just grab one thing. Don't be overwhelmed of, oh, I got to fix this. I need to fix this over here. I got to fix this. No, just grab one thing.
Mm,
If we said go on a date with your spouse, sounds good, do it. If we said reach out to a buddy and share something vulnerable, do it. Grab
yeah,
one thing, do it. If it works, or actually when it works, then
yeah,
grab a second thing and
yeah.
then a third. But I know there's no shortage of information out there with podcasts and books. However, there is a shortage of implementation.
Yeah.
I would love for these listeners to get 1% better because they took one thing and tried it.
Spoken like a true coach. Cory, thank you so much, man. This has been such a treat to have you on.
Hey, thank you very much. And loved all your questions, Sean, and the conversation.
Awesome.